Welcome to a new mini-series I'm doing on this channel. This series of videos is going to be focusing on some of the hidden mechanics in RuneScape. And by hidden mechanics, I mean things that don't immediately come to mind when talking about combat mechanics, but are interesting or odd quirks in feature about the combat mechanics that this game has to offer. And the first mechanic we're going to be discussing in this mini-series is ability stalling. If there are any hidden mechanics in RuneScape that you want to be discussed on here, feel free to leave it in the comments below. And if you find this video helpful and haven't subscribed, consider subscribing as there will be more coming out soon. So what is ability stalling? Well, in short, you're basically saving an ability for later. If I walk over here to this combat dummy and I hit attack and I press a random ability, the ability will go out instantly. However, if I go further away from the target and I press an ability, the character will run into the attack range of the weapon, which for melee swords is 1, and then release the ability once it is within range. And so essentially all you're doing there is saving your ability for later. Now this is going to automatically release once you get inside melee distance, but the mechanic here is that you can force release this ability later on as long as you interrupt the process of running back into the attack range of the weapons you're using. So if I go into my handy dandy bank here and grab some rune pouches, I will then have access to smoke cloud. Things like smoke cloud, when you use this as an input, I have a keybound on number 6 here, this will allow you to release stalls on the same and different targets. Now you don't need smoke cloud if you're stalling something on the same target that you're attacking. So say I want to use a couple abilities here and then I want to stall something, I can just stall, spam click the ground, and then walk back over, click the target, and then it releases. But if you want to use it on some other target, like say if I go here, I use the same ability, and then I try clicking on this one, the stall will not release as we swap targets. So if you want to release a stalled ability on a different target, you will need to use target cycle and smoke cloud to then release. You can also use things like vulnerability if you're on the normal spellbook. However, most people these days are just using smoke cloud. And what that looks like is you sit here, you just attack your target, and then you stall the ability, go over here, and then target cycle smoke cloud on the same tick. And as you can see, sever is the ability I stalled, and it released on this dummy. Now, where would stalling be useful? Well, the convenient thing about stalling is, say I have an ability here and I stall it, I can then release it with another ability, and that damage happens very quickly, basically one tick in between each other. So if you're coming out of a soft cap, or the boss is doing something that's invulnerable and then you want to stack a bunch of damage, or you're trying to get a bit of damage out to skip a mechanic, the way I think about it is you're increasing your DPS, or damage per second, at the potential sacrifice of damage per minute, or DPM, although typically this isn't the case, but that's a whole other discussion on rotations and whatnot. Essentially, it is very convenient for, say, Telos P4. If you stall an ability and then release it on Telos with another one, you can use it to potentially skip the special attacks and negate most of the special attacks, if not all of them, on phase 4, so you never deal with rockfall if you're above 1000%, or something like Glacore if you're dealing with the arm mechanic and you're in the middle of an ultimate when that happens. And at the tail end of your ult, Glacore becomes attackable, you can just stall an ability and then release it to get some more damage, or the most damage you can out of your ultimate, because Glacore was invincible during that portion. Another use case you will see ability stalling probably most commonly used is with pre-building. Now, pre-building is going to get its own video in this mini series, but essentially what you're doing in a pre-build is attacking, say, the dummies here and getting adrenaline here to build up a bunch of buffs before you go into a boss, to then melt it down and skip past some mechanics, like at Carapac, getting a nice pre-build going so you can skip the melee slams on phase 1 is very convenient. Now, if you want to stall on other combat styles, some of the typical ways that is done is with use of a melee offhand, because if I have my magic weapons here, as you can see, the range is 8 tiles away. So if I'm standing here, it's really hard to stall abilities here, but something you can do is equip a melee offhand, and if I click attack on the dummy, my character will run into melee distance, but I'm still on my magic bar and I can still stall abilities here, and then swap back to my magic offhand and release the stall and both abilities will hit. Now, what most people will do is just use their enhanced Excalibur to stall. I don't have enhanced Excalibur, so I usually will just use a Lang or bring something else in that place. Typically, the only places I really do use a lot of stalls are hybrid anyway, so I'm just going to be having an offhand no matter what, and that's where I find the most use out of it. Now, say with range specifically, you want to do a stall with a bow. Well, a bow is a two-hand weapon, and you can't really equip a melee offhand, so you could do something like bring Chinchampos or just a Blight main hand and some type of Excalibur or offhand melee weapon, because after you stall with a, say, main hand Blight or a main hand Ascension, whatever you happen to have, that you stall this ability and then you swap to a bow, you can just release with a different ability, and it didn't matter if you swapped to your bow because that's not going to wipe the stall. Now, there are many things that will wipe a stall from your player. For instance, if I sit here and I stall my Decimate, and then I escape to the target, or I surge to the target, and then click. As you can see, the stall was wiped. It's no longer there. However, if I use something like Dive or Bladed Dive and then release, Dive does not wipe ability stalls. Another thing that makes stalling significantly easier is the Necromancy incantations. Both Darkness and Invoke Lord of Bones do not wipe stalls, and they keep you in combat. So I can just sit here and infinitely spam this as much as I want. I could spam Darkness as well, maybe hit another Invoke, and my stall will stay that entire time. So this is an easy perpetual way to keep yourself in combat, because dropping combat will also get rid of a stall. If I run in here and I drop combat and then go ahead and attack, then I lose the stall. Most people are going to be having a Nexus with them no matter what combat style they're doing, so either Invoke Lord of Bones or Darkness. If you don't want to use Darkness because you're trying to take advantage of Divert at a boss, for instance, that is definitely a reason to have Invoke Lord of Bones. And one last thing I should mention is that you don't need Best in Slot to do any type of stalling. This is a combat mechanic, and it is not dependent on Best in Slot gear. You could do this with tier 60, 50, 40 weapons. It's all part of the combat mechanics. Anyways, I hope this video was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to leave it down in the comments below. If you have any suggestions for other hidden mechanics that I should cover, feel free to leave it in the comments below. I have a decent list already, so if it is on the list and I'm going to cover it, I'll just let you know in the comments, but if not, I definitely will add it. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, consider subscribing, liking, commenting. All that stuff really helps out and pushes it out in the algorithm so more people can get educated on these topics. But that is all I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching. Your viewership is greatly appreciated. Have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon, nighttime, whatever it is, wherever you are, and I will see you next time for the next video. Peace.